first song this morning is written by Pavani entitled, I Will Always Think of Thee. And we'll ask you on the last verse to join on, Dear God, my God, I am thine for eternity, I am thine eternally.
Good morning. This morning's reading comes from Rays of the One Light, weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. Week 49 topic, what is it to fail spiritually? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. The first passage is from the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 25. Jesus here tells the parable of the 10 virgins, 5 of them wise and 5 foolish. They await their bridegroom, the Christ consciousness. The wise virgins keep the oil in their lamps, symbolic of their devotion, lit through the night. The foolish virgins placed no oil in their lamps. And these foolish ones are like the average devotee, going through the motions of outer ritual, but keeping no fire of love burning in the heart. So when the bridegroom's coming is announced, the foolish virgins realize their mistake and hasten out to purchase oil. During their absence, the Christ consciousness comes and embraces those who have been waiting him with devotion. The foolish ones, by their lackluster devotion, are not accepted by him. Quote, "Watch therefore," Jesus told his listeners, "for you know neither the day nor the hour wherein the Son of Man cometh." In Autobiography of a Yogi, Paramahansa Yogananda describes the foolish virgin consciousness he encountered in the Mahamandal hermitage he stayed in as a young man in Benares. He says, "I was pleased that my new home possessed an attic where I managed to spend the dawn and morning hours. The ashram members, knowing little of meditation practices, thought I should employ my whole time in organizational duties. They gave me praise for my afternoon work in their office. 'Don't try to catch God so soon.' This ridicule accompanied one of my early departures toward the attic, and later during my meditation, I felt lifted as though bodily to a sphere uncircumscribed. 'Thy master cometh today.' A divine womanly voice came from everywhere and nowhere. This supernal experience was pierced by a shout from a definite locale. A young priest, nicknamed Habu, was calling me from the downstairs kitchen. 'Mukunda, enough of meditation. You are needed for an errand.' The Divine Mother's words were not spoken for the benefit of that priest, the foolish virgin, but for Mukunda, the wise virgin. For this was the day his guru, Sri Yukteswar, came to him. So grieve not, friends, if you feel that you have been foolish. No error is forever. Someday, if you keep your lamp lit now, your opportunity will come. In the Bhagavad Gita, the 6th chapter, Krishna promises every devotee, Arjuna, none who works for self-redemption will ever meet an evil destiny. Spiritual failure, though a deep disappointment, is always temporary. Quote, eternal hellfire is but a projection of vindictiveness in the human mind. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Good morning. For those who don't know, my name is Pavani, and this is my husband, Vajra, and we're joined by Bharati and Lorna. I'm going to share a little bit, and then Vajra will share as well. When I saw that we were scheduled for today, I thought, oh good, we get a happy Christmas topic. Of course, then I saw that the topic was, what is it to fail spiritually? So it caused me to reflect on how that topic might relate to the Christmas season. And what struck me is that the answer to the question, what is it to fail spiritually, and the answer being the allegory of the foolish and the wise virgins. The wise virgins keeping the oil in their lamps and keeping them lit, symbolizing their devotion, and the foolish virgins not doing that. And, you know, this time of year is probably the most sweetest devotional time. And I think the reading is reminding us to tune into that, because it's this time of year that God comes to us as a baby. What could be more tender, more heart-opening than a baby? The Nativity is an extraordinary image of the all-powerful, omniscient consciousness of God expressed through this tiny, beautiful, radiant baby. This baby that we can hold, that we can take care of, and that we can watch peacefully sleep. And when you take care of a baby, you have to be constantly aware of them. You have to be constantly vigilant. And that brings us back to our wise virgins, because they were constantly vigilant of keeping their lamps lit with devotion. So this season is a special opportunity to fill the lamps in our own hearts and keep them lit with devotion, to hold the baby Jesus there in the quiet center of our heart. I'm going to say that again because there's a feeling that goes along with that, to hold the baby Jesus there in the quiet center of our heart, amidst all the busy outward activities of this season. There's a busy activity that I'm involved in right now, and it has to do with the school, the Living Wisdom School here. And I teach performing arts there, and we're preparing our holiday program. And one of the pieces we're doing is a couple scenes from Little Women. And it takes place at Christmas during the Civil War, which is in the 1860s. So I've been researching what Christmas was like at that time. And it's been fascinating. Christmas wasn't made a national holiday until 1870, after the Civil War. And it was done in part to unify the nation. Before the war, many states, some states celebrated Christmas, other states did not, especially those with more Puritan origins. If they did celebrate Christmas at all, it was through fasting and prayer. The traditions we have now of caroling and the Christmas tree and giving gifts and Santa and all of that came from Europe, and they were gaining popularity during the mid-19th century. But it was 4 years of intense war that changed the meaning of Christmas in this country. Because the separation of the women and children with the men they loved on the battlefield during the Christmas season became especially poignant. And there was an artist of the day named Thomas Nash who drew for the Harper's Weekly, I think it was, periodical. And he did this rendering of, you saw a woman on one side kneeling in the moonlit window with her children asleep in the bed, praying for her husband who's at war. And on the other side, you see him sitting alone by a fire, looking at 2 photos of his family. You know, so it's just really poignant. And that became the nation's experience, both North and South, of the season. And so after the war, this sense of Christmas being about family being together became the dominant experience. And that has continued to this day. And so for all of us, we have this dance of, you know, during the holidays, of fulfilling family needs and our spiritual needs, and also dealing with the bittersweet emotions that can come up during this time. But underneath all of that, there is this longing of the heart for the sweetness and joy and love and peace and beauty and simplicity, all qualities that are expressed by that baby laying in the manger. And this longing in our hearts can lead us to spiritual success. For the fulfillment we seek can only be found in the cradle of our own hearts. To share from Whispers from Eternity. I plucked blossoms of light from dawn's heart as offerings to thee. I have lighted lamps of wakefulness in the temple of my morning's silence. I beheld thy bliss face emerge from the dark shadows of my ignorance, where it had been hidden for long eons by my indifference. And seeing thy smiling joy, I know that my own happiness mirrored thy blessed image. My heart's tiny capacity for love mirrored thy infinite love. My little peace of mind mirrored thy awe-inspiring, majestic calmness. I will blame the fates no longer for any suffering that comes my way. Beloved Divine Mother, it was my self-made darkness that hid the glory of our mutual love. Now I see myself reflected in thy bliss and know that I, too, am perfect bliss. For my own mirror is clear now. I behold thy reflection in it. O thou ever sacred, omnipresent, perfect bliss. I pour libations of my love at thy feet of immortality. I pour out my heart to thee from the overflowing chalice of my soul. I wash with the precious musk of my reverence thy feet of ever-moving progress in everything.
Thank you, Pavani. Good morning. What is it to fail spiritually? Interesting, that title contains what you might call an oxymoron in fail spiritually, because you can't ultimately fail spiritually. It's impossible. You can, however, delay the process of spiritual growth. I think we're, at least most of us, a bit like those foolish virgins in having tendencies to not always pay attention to those things that are most important. Or like that fellow disciple of Master's who said, "Don't try to catch God too soon." Master might have replied to him, "Do you have something better to do?" The virgin story is presented as a very dramatic scenario about failing spiritually. The 5 virgins, later, they go and get their oil, and they wound up going to the wedding and knocking on the door, and the bridegroom comes to the door and says, "I know you not," and closes the door. Whoa, harsh. How this same scenario plays out in our lives most of the time tends to be a little less dramatic. Nevertheless, it goes on all the time. And in thinking about this, I was what brought to mind a cartoon. In fact, I brought it with me. I'm sorry you can't all see it. We should have a projector up here. It's a classic one. Probably many of you have seen it. It's a cat at the pearly gates. And St. Peter is holding the gates open, and the cat is just standing there. And if you have cats especially, you know this phenomenon. They meow and meow to go out, and you open the door, and they stand there. And St. Peter says, "Make up your mind, are you going in or not?" And the subtitle is, "How Cats End Up with 9 Lives." Well, the choices that we face on a daily basis aren't really about having 9 lives, and they're not really about choosing between salvation and damnation, like those 40s movies that would have, the little devil on one shoulder and the little angel on the other shoulder, and you're listening and you're torn. Which one are you gonna listen to? The eternal hellfire, as we heard, is but a projection of vindictiveness in the human mind. We have these tendencies and we project them and create this scenario, and then we think that it applies to us. Nevertheless, we are continually making those choices. And when we make the wrong choices, things go kind of like what they went for the 5 foolish virgins. Now, Swami points out in an expanded version of the rays, from Rays of the Same Light, that those 5, though considered foolish virgins when compared to the wise virgins who kept that light of that oil of devotion so that their lamps could burn brightly, those 5 virgins aspired to marry the bridegroom. These are 5 among countless thousands who don't even have such an aspiration. And as he points out, their chance would come again. If not in this life, then perhaps in the next. But eventually, it will come. He goes on to say, God is a God of love, not of pique at human slights. He doesn't look for those little mistakes to slam us down when we blow it. What I found a useful metaphor in the spiritual quest is, I believe it came from Ananda, but it's the train. We're on a train. We are all manifestations of the divine, expressions of the divine, and our ultimate destiny is to return to the divine. That's the train that we're on. That's the way it's going to happen. Now, within that train, we can walk to the front of the train in the same direction that the train's going, or we can walk towards the back of the train in the opposite direction that the train is going, thereby seemingly delaying the process should we make those foolish choices. It also occurred to me that if you go that direction, at the end of the train is the caboose. The caboose is like karma. That's as far as you can go. It's also a little like a bungee cord. You can go and go and go, but you can't keep going in that direction. Karma, that's the part of the salvation that God has provided for us. It's a guarantee. It'll pull you back. No matter how far out there you will get pulled back, like it or not, cooperate or not. That's your destiny. So we can work with it or we can oppose it. And if we feel that we'll never get there, again, that sense of never doesn't really mean anything. Again, Swami points out, it's our identity with change that creates the illusion of passing time. Feel that through all outward changes, the immortal soul, you, the immortal soul, remain the same. In other words, it's not a matter of striving for salvation that's out there somewhere or waiting for salvation to come to you, because that notion of time is not true. It's an illusion. It's there. We're there. All that's lacking is our opening up and tuning in to receive it. What we're looking for in the midst of our daily commotion, which is what we experience, part of Maya, is that timeless connection with the divine. And when we're listening and feeling for that timeless connection, we do that so that, as St. Paul says, when it comes, like a thief in the night, not with outward lightning, trumpets, and crashing chords, but silently, invisibly, save only to those whose thoughts are deeply attentive, wrapped in deep communion with him. That's what we want to catch. That's the bridegroom when he comes. And it can come in so many different ways. But if we're listening, if we're paying attention, We won't miss it when it comes. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, and this is how we do it, this is why we have the practices that we have. Be thou therefore a yogi, O Arjuna. He who absorbs his mind and soul in me, unceasingly established in my rest, know him to be among all yogis best. That's how you get there. These practices are to help us develop that attunement, to develop that listening, that awareness. Now, I can't claim to have attained that state, but I work at it whenever I can, as much as I am able to think of it. And when you pay attention to it, interesting things can start to happen. Last night, as I was preparing for sitting down at the computer and trying to collect my thoughts and see what inspirations might come to me, I realized that, I need to check because I think I have a credit card payment due. So I checked, and I did, and I took care of that, and then I thought, well, maybe I should check that other one as well. So I went to my Home Depot account, and I brought it up on the screen, and there's the home page of my Home Depot credit card account, and it says there, taking up a third of the page, you have no balance. Okay. For me, that was a message. I'd never seen it like that. You have no balance. I thought, all right, okay, we're going to put that aside here. Let's focus on what we're supposed to focus on. And at first I thought it was rather humorous, but later as I was working on the talk, I realized, it is a message. Maybe I don't have no balance, but I don't yet have the balance I should have. And I know it. And I spend a lot of time like those foolish virgins finding reasons or just being absent-minded why not to be focusing on that, opening the heart and soul to the divine. Because these other things are so important, right? So that was, to me, a great example of how the divine will speak to you if you're listening. I didn't get it right away, but then I did. I said, it's true. And I do need to pay attention, even to the computer screen. I've been going through Sati, for those of you who are familiar with astrology, and I'm not especially, but I do know that when I talk to people who are, they usually go, ooh, are you okay? I looked it up online, and it was described as 7.5 years of Saturn bad luck. That's harsh. Fortunately, I had a reading from Drupada as I entered into this phase, who has a way of putting astrology in a very positive light, finding what it is in your current astrological makeup that will help you and how to respond to it appropriately. Saturn returns are about challenges, obstacles, difficulties. I think of that photo. This is an actual photo of a salmon swimming upstream, right? You can imagine what a struggle it is. The current is pushing you back, and you're leaping forward, and one salmon makes a huge and mighty leap and finds himself 6 inches away from the open mouth of a bear. I feel like that salmon a lot of the time. But I found, and these were the tips that Drupada gave me, that with surrender, that's really the key to the divine will. Stop trying to impose your will on what's happening. Pay attention to what's happening. Persistence, patience, receptivity, but allowing for the divine to participate in those challenges. And what I find is that the solutions come. And the odd thing is that the solutions seem to come in spite of my efforts, with no causal relationship to the things I'm doing. I'm working away and struggling in that, and I persist and throw my hands up, and the solution comes from over here, having apparently nothing to do with what I was trying to do, but still the solutions come. I was working on a door for a tenant, a storage door. It wouldn't close. It kept hitting down at the bottom against the flooring on the inside of the closet. And there I was. I'd already done the things I thought I was going to be doing. It was getting late, and I knew I just couldn't spend that much time on this project. I had a saw in my truck, but it was a little saw, and it wouldn't cut through all the way on the bottom of the door. And so I'm going through this great debate of, what do I do? Do I go to the shop and get the big saw, and I got to get the extension cord? Do I take it off the hinges? And all of these things were looming in front of me. And I said, no, that's just too much. Master, what am I supposed to do? It was that moment that saved me. Because what I felt was just make do with what you've got. So I said, okay, somehow, even though the saw won't make it all the way through the door, I'll figure out something. So I got the saw out, and lo and behold, there was a plug right inside the door, right next to me, so I didn't need an extension cord. I made the cut. It was just a little piece along the bottom that needed to be removed. And it didn't go all the way through, but what it did do is it stopped just short of the front panel. And it took everything else off. And the door closed perfectly without ever disturbing the appearance of the door. And two things occurred to me. One was, wow, that was the perfect solution. And the other was, I didn't have much to do with that. But the thought was, thank you, Lord, for reminding me who's in charge here. The Swami writes, how beautiful then are Krishna's words of reassurance in this great passage of the Bhagavad Gita. No right effort, he assures us, is ever lost. As he promised also elsewhere, not even a little bit of the practice of this religion of inner communion, no matter what you're doing, even a little practice will save you from dire fears and colossal sufferings. From dire fears and colossal sufferings. One of Master's disciples, Norman, who despaired of the seeming realities of his life and said, Master, I must have bad karma. And Master said to him, Norman, remember, it takes very, very, very good karma to even want to know God. Blessing.
The song is by Swami Ananda entitled God's Call Within.
Thank you, everyone who was here last night. It was a beautiful event. It was such a lovely evening to share together. And there's more coming. The main thing we want to make sure everybody knows is next Saturday, 6:30, here at the temple, we are having our choir concert. And it will be a lot of fun. It's a lot of wonderful music. We're going to have a harpist. We're going to have, the cello with David. We're going to have just beautiful music, and we would love for you to be here. And then afterwards, we're having a cookie satsang, and you are all welcome to come and bring cookies so that we can all share cookies. It'll be a fun evening. That's next Saturday. Then during the week, we have our regular drop-in yoga, drop-in meditation. We have on Wednesday evening our book study group that's getting together and going through Asha's book, Swami Kriyananda Lightbearer. And everybody is welcome to join in that anytime. That's Wednesday. And then I want to make sure that you have on your calendar the opportunity for our meditations that happen over the Christmas holiday. Traditionally, Yogananda started the tradition of an 8-hour meditation during the Christmas season on the 23rd. And so we do that every year on the 23rd. And then we offer an alternate to that so that people have an opportunity to come. So the 23rd this year is on Monday, so we offer an alternate on Saturday, the 21st, also 8 hours, which can be pretty overwhelming sometimes to think about a full 8 hours. But what you do is you come, see how long you last, do part of it, come to the beginning, come to the end, come during the chanting breaks. If you have any questions about that, let me know. But it's a wonderful way to really soak up the vibrations of the season. And then the last thing is out at the front desk, everybody is welcome to help themselves to a little gift from Jyotish and Devi. They send us something every year, and I don't know what it is. It's in a lovely little envelope, and everybody is welcome to one. So as you leave this morning, be sure to pick one up as a Merry Christmas present to yourself. And thank you for being here.